Good day, everyone. Happy days, happy holidays, happy New Year, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever the hell you celebrate. It's December 26th, 2015. Christmas was yesterday. It's a beautiful day. And I guess it's kind of a matter of making it what you want it to be. And that was the subject for a video I made the other day. So today I wanted to talk about alchemy, transmutation of thoughts and elements, talk about a few things that I've learned. I'm going to try to pace myself here instead of just going on and on like I always do. So forgive me if I vape, but it helps me to shut up for a second so I can gather my thoughts. Something I don't quite do so often. I tend to just go with the flow, and I just let life speak through me. I don't. A lot of the times I think about what I'm going to say to an extent, but I really don't plan anything out. So sometimes I get way off subject. And in this one, I wanted to talk about alchemy. Something I've been reading a lot about in my life since I was younger. I've been kind of interested in the idea of, basically, many of my past videos I've talked about mental alchemy, transmutation of thoughts and ideas. But I'm well aware that that's not the only alchemy, that there is the alchemical process of working actually with metals, not just base metals, not even just gold or silver, but mercury being a major component of this practice. Now, mercury, I'm not going to get into the metaphoric representations of these metals right now. Gold has to do with red, silver has to do with white, gold has to do with the sun, silver has to do with the moon. These metals are symbolic of different ideas, as well as the macro and the microcosm. They represent certain aspects of mankind's soul and being and essence, this quintessence that everyone's trying to seek, the perfection that arises out of the material world. And the idea is to purify material things, material elements, to get them to their pure state. And when you look at the metaphor for it, it's getting yourself to your pure mind. And that's so a person could easily say, well, alchemy just merely means to purify your thoughts. Before I get into the metals part of it and the actual technical aspects of it, alchemy, or as far as mental transmutation, it's all about changing your way of thinking and altering your thoughts to where you're learning to think positive and training yourself. This morning I was thinking of it as akin to just like farming. Okay, we once relied on the land to just provide us with our food. We didn't control that aspect of it. It just came seasonally. And likewise, our thoughts followed that same type of pattern. And we just kind of let life take us where it took us. Well, when we started to take charge of our food and plant our own crops, around that same time we really started to take charge of our minds too. And having more time to think and to plan things out. And we started realizing the strategy behind planting food so we had plenty for the future. As we plant our seeds in our crops, we know that we have to plant them well and at the right time and be patient and allow them to grow. Now, when we're learning how to think new ways, when we're learning how to do new practices, whether it be just mental alchemy or magic itself, people are often dismayed by the thought that, they can't jump right into it and just have secrets and answers and have results. Well, just like building muscle, just like growing your food, it takes time and persistence, and the payoff is the reward. Whatever you seek, you shall find. So if you're seeking knowledge, or you're seeking to think a certain way, then only through practice will you attain that. I've discovered this to be true in my life. I've only gained the knowledge that I've found and deemed necessary and worthy to make life, livable and wonderful. So when you start to see those metaphors as planting the seed and harvesting, we've all heard it a million times, metaphors are so common, but they're necessary for everything. If you want to understand the alchemical processes, you have to understand the metaphors behind the metals, which is, what I'm still working on. And so one of the most interesting components was quicksilver, or mercury, which was always deemed to be the, look at it, it's a flowing metal, it's perfect. Many processes using this were obviously very dangerous. In fact, in some Chinese medicines, they still drink mercury. It's considered to be a medicine to them in some of the primal religions. It's a very mystical substance, and whatever powers the ancients attributed to it, of course, that's not necessarily going to be fact. They may have been a little bit, well, let's just say they thought it prolonged life in some lines of thinking, but really we know it was probably shortening many lives. However, using quicksilver or mercury is something that not a lot of people play with as far as, doing these types of experiments, alchemical experiments today. We've kind of moved away from it. We're afraid of it. We don't want to touch it. I'd like to order some just to experiment around with. The idea is to understand that the process is never to turn literally lead to gold. If a person can do that, they could do that. We can do it in a laboratory in small amounts. But doing it on a large scale requires something a little more complicated that I don't understand yet, obviously. But one of the things that I learned was that the most important thing that all alchemists know is that you don't change, substances into other substances. In other words, you may change a metal into another metal, or some sort of a liquid into another liquid, but you're not going to change a liquid into a metal, or a metal into a liquid. Now, this is a really important factor. It's like, I wish I had thought about this before, because I had a better example, but because I don't have one at all. But everything stays within its classification. When I was talking about the 7 principles, the Hermetic principles the other day, I was talking about how you can never make good into something hot, or something cold into something bad. You can make something hot or cold depending on perspective, but there really is no hot and cold, okay? Because cold is always only relative to what we consider hot, and it's within our thermometer range, because that's what we have attributed to be hot or cold. If you lower the scale, then colder is gonna become hot when you drop down below 0. So same with good and evil. If somebody says something's good and something's bad, it's only good and bad in perspective or relative comparison to something else. So if you have 2 really bad things, then one of them is going to be lesser, and it may be the good. This is the main aspect of alchemical thinking, or rather, understanding that your mind perceives things a certain way. It's really the glass half full, if you want. Everybody's heard of that one. And that analogy kind of suits life in general. You always look at the positive in a situation, and you start to train your brain, and you plant those seeds. And you never do it delusional, though. You never fool yourself into thinking that something's wonderful just because, well, everything happens. When you see things that are wrong, there are certain things that we deem to be evil. I could think of a lot of examples. These are the philosophic debates that come up. What about people who, molest children? That kind of stuff. It's totally there's no way to justify it. There's absolutely no way to compare it to anything else that we understand, because we as humans, we know what we deem to be right and wrong in the universe. We don't understand quite the deeper complexities. For example, we'll argue religion and think that one person's evil just because they believe a different thing, even if they practice completely the same things. But we may protect someone who does something like molest children just because they're in our club. This is what the Catholic Church has done. In society, we're only worth what we do with what we know is right and true. So the idea of the mental alchemy is to purify your processes, to understand and analyze what you do and what you think, and ask yourself why you think that way. What are you gaining from life? Think about things deeper. Not what am I gaining right now, short term, but long term. And for my people. We get what we ask for. Like I said, I don't do a lot of sitting and asking and praying because I don't feel like I need anything. I'm very content with what I have, but these practices of thinking differently are what brought me to that point. It wasn't a matter of finally I have what I wanted. It was a matter of I've adjusted what I wanted by a different process. So since I got off track and I never got to the point I wanted to, I did, that's all I wanted to talk about, but there was one thing I wanted to say before I left. A recent discovery in a tomb in South America where they found a lot of mercury underneath the king's chamber, and I've been reading a lot about these ever-burning lamps, and I'm going to talk about this in the next video, so I guess I'll just leave it for then. I'll just keep this one to the mental alchemy, because I could go on and on. Talk to y'all later.